Hello, Scorpio. Welcome to your June 2023 astrological forecast. For those of you who are new, my name is Jane. Now, for June, I was kind of like really looking at this. I'm like, where do I even really want to start for Scorpio? And weirdly enough, I want to start with the South Node. Now, nothing is really happening with the South Node other than this is the last full month of having the node in Scorpio, because in July, this node is going to move into Libra. And I think this is the last opportunity for Scorpio because South Node can bring a lot of decrease. It can deplete the energy of wherever it is. So for you in your first house, it can have, a depletion of your sense of self, although a lot of energy and attention can still go here. Sometimes it can feel like a sinkhole of energy. And the more and more you try to hang on to who you are or who you were, the more and more it just kind of slips through your fingers. And a lot of that is defined by your personal relationships over in the seventh house. And sometimes that can be a little disorienting because you're like, well, who am I? And I think the sun in the eighth house is accentuating that even more. And you're developing, you're getting acquainted with a new layer of yourself. And I think Scorpio has been pushed in such a way with that South Node transit and all the eclipses that happen there and all the opposition stuff going on over in Taurus. You've been really forced to kind of let go of the reins a little bit and allow yourself to just develop, to allow yourself to just evolve because you genuinely didn't really have a choice. As much as Scorpio is about transformation, Scorpio is also just as much about the resistance to that transformation as well. And it can be hard, but it inevitably happens under the Scorpio umbrella. It's the inevitability of change. One of the reasons why change is so constant is because Scorpio is a part of the zodiac, okay? It's an unavoidable thing. And this South Node, it's really going to pump through its last little lessons about fear, the last little lessons about getting buried under something, the last little lessons about who you think you are versus the true aspect of yourself, which is soul driven. And I think Pluto is teaching you a lot about that as well. Now, Pluto on the 11th is going to retrograde back into Capricorn. And when he does this, this is his first time retrograding back into Capricorn. It is going to happen twice. So it's going to happen again next year. It's not only that, but he's also coming into contact with the fourth house cusp. Now, in my opinion, the fourth house cusp is without question one of, I would say, the most important. Because it is from this fourth house, this is like the roots, right? This is where we came from. And it goes beyond just our childhood. It goes deep into the cosmos down here, okay? Deep into our origin story. And every other house of the wheel represents like the branches in the trunk of that tree, okay? So the fourth house changes you at your core, at your absolute deepest. And when it comes over this fourth house line like this, it is an uncontrollable process that's happening. So yes, you are evolving. Yes, you are changing. And yes, you know it and know there's nothing you can do to stop it. And this is something that may impact your relationships, Jupiter in the 7th. Now, this could be a fantastic thing for your relationships, or it can be a really tough thing. Jupiter is just here to expand whatever. So if something is going really great, it's going to expand the good. If something is really neutral, it will just expand the neutrality. If it is going really bad, it's going to expand the bad. It's just here to amplify and magnify. And as much as I love Jupiter for blessings, and yes, there can certainly be a lot of blessings that come through, it depends on how accepting and receptive you are to those things. Not everyone accepts the Jupiterian aspects of life. So a lot of people reject it. They've got really tough placements in their own chart, and it's uncomfortable for them when something good happens. So there could be something deep in your core which is enabling you to allow more love and more connection and more unification into your life, which can impact every area of your life. It can help you financially, it can help you professionally, like literally everything. Okay? And the sun in the 8th, I think, is, supporting that message. 8th house being, well, it's like kind of your natural house, quote unquote. It's a house of death. It's also a house of learning how to merge resources first and foremost, but it's also a house of energetic exchange as well. This is where, like, for example, I always say it like this: 7th house is where you get married. 8th house is where you become one, right? Those are really two different things that don't always go hand in hand. So I think a lot of people, a lot of Scorpios rather, are learning a lot about intimacy, learning about sharing, learning about integrating other people. And especially as Mercury comes in through Gemini on the 11th, which is the same day that Pluto moves back into Capricorn, Mercury comes into the 8th. And it makes it possible. And because Mercury is moving so fast, and he is going to move really fast through Gemini, he is going to kind of accelerate a lot of the change and a lot of the things that are being illuminated for you right now. That can be great. That can be a good thing, because it doesn't always have to be such a long, prolonged, drawn out process. You can just evolve and move on. We also have this Saturn. Saturn's going to go retrograde on the 17th, okay? He retrogrades in the 5th. 5th house being a house of children, a house of dating and casual fun. There's a lot of entertainment that comes through this house. Sometimes when Saturn is in here, you feel like you have to earn the joy, you have to earn the pleasure of life. Like, oh man, I can't really go out until I do these, 14 hours worth of work or something. You kind of work and then you reward yourself because of the work sometimes. So if that's the case, I think a Saturn retrograde, you can be a little bit harder on yourself. You can push yourself a lot harder, and maybe you do reject some of the more pleasurable things. Maybe you are feeling really disconnected from the things you used to enjoy. Maybe you used to enjoy going out with your friends, and now you're like, no, I'd really rather stay in. Maybe you're going a little bit hermit mode with this retrograde. Maybe you're just kind of being a lot more selective and choosy, or maybe you're just taking a genuine pleasure in your work. You don't want to leave. You enjoy it. You're having a good time. It's bringing about passion for you. And that's great. Also, with Saturn retrograde in the 5th house, I think there's a lot of reconsideration of what you're looking for in long-term relationships. If you're single, if you're already married or attached, you might be thinking about, how can we kind of rev this up a little bit? How can we get the, I'm not going to say get the spark back, but, how can we get to know each other again and go have fun? Let's go do something together that affords us, that platform to continue this long-lasting bond. I think Scorpio is taking a lot of responsibility on their shoulders to make sure that things work, to make sure things are working, and to make sure you're doing things that do have some sense of longevity. And maybe you're doing that because you know how much you're changing on the inside. And that's going to be a consistent theme, not only for June, but even as we make our way, it's going to be kind of an in and out recurring theme over the next couple of years, especially as Jupiter comes in your 8th house next year. Okay. But relationships are playing a really big part in Scorpio's transformation. The other thing too, we have Venus officially in Leo now, and she is preparing for her retrograde, which is happening in July. Now, she's not retrograding in June. I just want to be really clear about that. But she is going to enter her pre-shadow phase. So when she hits the 12-degree mark, she's officially in her pre-shadow, which is the period of time before her retrograde at 28 degrees. So between 12 and 28, that's where she's going to retrograde. So when she hits 12, pre-shadow, and we start to see the themes of what we need to work on, what we need to reevaluate. Venus with Mars here, and I kind of feel like Mars is sort of trailblazing a little bit. He's just a little bit ahead of her. She's not officially going to come into a full conjunction with Mars, but she is going to come pretty close over the course of June and July. And they're going to kind of trail together a little bit, and they're going to be together for a long time. Mars is kind of trailblazing here, and Venus is kind of picking up a lot of the pieces. You're making moves. You're making big moves here. And this is a good time, I think, for Scorpio to make some big moves. I think you're well supported to do that. If it was a Mars retrograde, I'd be like, no, hold off. No, but it's not. It's a Venus. So we get to reevaluate and reassess the value that we're placing on our work, the value that we're placing on this direction that we've chosen to take. Because sometimes the direction that we choose to take simply does not meet our needs anymore, and we need to change direction. So I think that's what's going on, is Scorpio is going to take a minute throughout June to just kind of suss out, like, well, what's coming up for me right now? What am I feeling? What am I thinking? What types of issues are arising here? And instead of like rushing in like a firefighter trying to put out all the fires, you're just kind of letting things burn and seeing what's sustainable. Seeing what, again, I do think Scorpio is really longevity focused. Now, don't get me wrong, Saturn is retrograde for everybody. Everyone's going through a Saturn retrograde. But for some reason in the 5th house with Pluto in the 4th, I'm kind of feeling like for you, this is more about let me see what's going to last long term. And let's get rid of everything else. Everything else that's not going to last long term, we've got to get rid of. And we have to move on, and we have to evolve, which has been a theme with the South Node in your sign anyway. Let's let everything fall away. And then once the fires have been put out and we see what's been left standing, then we can start making some big decisions. And that's probably what the next few months is really going to be about for Scorpio, especially through July when she actually does begin her retrograde. But you're just going to see the beginning themes of that now, okay? Specifically in terms of your career or your life path. Now, last one, when Cancer season is activated on the 21st, happy solstice, everybody. Sun comes in to your 9th house. There's that desire for expansion, okay, taking on more. And then Mercury, again, who's moving really fast through Gemini, on the 26th, Mercury is going to come into Cancer. So on the 11th, this is a couple weeks, he's in Gemini. The 11th, he comes into Gemini, boom, super, super fast, comes into Cancer. And then we have a Neptune retrograde in the 5th on the 30th. I do think Cancer season is going to be really emotional. I do think with that Neptune retrograde accompanying it, plus, not to mention, right, with this particular solstice, this is the longest day of the year. Officially, the night starts getting longer. Now, the day is still longer than the night, yes, of course, but the night is starting to creep in. So there can be a lot of doubts, a lot of concerns, a lot of fear that arises during this time. Not to mention, we also have Pluto dipping back into Capricorn here. So Capricorn is kind of offering that kind of sense of control, or that desire to try to control something, even though you know you either don't or you can't, or whatever the case is. And it's like you can't control it. And so sometimes that can bring about the emotion. It is going to have an element of uncontrollability, though. So the best bet is to just kind of let the emotions surface, let yourself feel what you need to feel. And I always say, and I've been saying this for a few weeks now, and I'm going to keep reiterating it, Gemini and Cancer, these two zodiac signs are so unique. With Gemini, we learn to expand our mind and learn new things and go and collect and brainstorm and talk to a bunch of people and whatnot. We kind of have a lot of scattered energy during this time, but there's a lot of brilliant ideas that can come through Gemini as well. In Cancer, this is when we allow ourselves to really feel connected to something. You've got 100 Post-its on your mirror, right? Which one speaks out to you? Which idea, which concept, which life path change, which whatever, what speaks to you the most? Your heart is going to tell you that in Cancer season. So you don't have to do anything to really lock yourself into stuff right now. In fact, I think the best thing is to not lock yourself into something. It's more about just kind of opening yourself up and being available to all of the options until your heart is a little bit more clear. And before that happens with this Neptune retrograde, I think we just have to feel the feelings first. We have to feel the feelings because the feelings might be suppressing the voice of the soul a little bit. So let the feelings out so that your soul can more explicitly express itself. Okay? All right, Scorpio, I'm going to leave you with that. Thank you so much. You guys know I love you. Have an amazing month, and I'll talk to you soon. Take care.